The United States looks at dropping patent requirements for vaccines to get them overseas to third world countries. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser joins the Governors Association, which says that, hey, we think that they're going to be a state coming up soon. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on with that. The eviction moratorium appears to have ended, and, well, this is going to shake a few things up. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on with that. And it looks like the police officer in the Rayshard Brooks shooting will be reinstated with no charges. So, well, I guess if you're in Atlanta, hunker down and prepare for a few riots, because that's going to be coming up. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, 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 do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got some stuff to get to today. And totally on me, overslept. I got roused back up by I don't know if it was thunderclap or what the hell it was, but something roused me out at like 12:15, and then I couldn't get back to sleep. So once that 5 a.m. alarm hit, my body said, nope. And we got back up at 6 and started doing show prep instead. So that's totally on me. But the mission still for May is going to be to get Contemporary back to its 7 a.m. start time. So with your support, I will continue to put my best effort to do that because, you know, then we're done. Then we don't have to rush at the end and we can get more news in. And there is a plenty of stupid shit to talk about here, which we're going to talk about all that and more. But before we get started, head on over, check out my friends. The Generational Gap, the Daily Ignoramus, the R-Rated Conservative, even though he's on a hiatus right now because, well, I have my speculations as to why he is on hiatus. I think I know, but yeah, he's on a hiatus for the week. He will be back starting next week, so go and check him out over there. Also, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff and The Freckles of Brit Show. Head on over to our website, bookmark it, because we're still under construction, but once we're back up and running, you can see all of my friends over there, and you can also pick up some of our swag or directly support great creators over there. All right, looking in at the finance dropped off in the morning on the Dow Jones at least. 34,230.34 was the close after it came back and rebounded and then started to drop again as we went through the day, ending 97.31 points above where it was yesterday. So a little bit of back and forth, but still mainly flat. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. All right, from Google. 58,100 even US dollars is your Bitcoin as of this morning. So those of you who bought the dip, once again, probably looking a little bit happy right now. Not big happy, but a little bit happy. You know, and we keep hearing people talk about the fact that, oh, I should have bought Bitcoin back when it was 14 bucks a coin. Yeah, well, shoulda, woulda, coulda. We could all be fucking retired right now if we'd all come back and bought it while it was sitting still at 14 bucks. But, you know, we looked at some of the numbers here. Even me, when I look back at what Bitcoin was when I first started getting into it, and the fact that it was, what the fuck was it, $17,000 a Bitcoin at the time. And if I would have bought even a 20 in there, I'd still be a happy dude right now. But I am glad that I got a little bit of Doge when it was still a third of a cent per Dogecoin. And I bought 20 bucks of it at a third of a cent per Dogecoin. I'm not rich, but I got a little bit back out of it, and I'm happy about that. I got to participate. All right, let's see what we've got going on over here at GasBuddy. It looks like the 253s are gone, and the 259s and 258s are going away too. Some stations in the Madison area are up to $2.69 per gallon, so adjust and see what your gas price is going to be locally, but that's a good benchmark as to where we are going to be. So we'll see what happened there. From IBD. Never mind. We can't read IBD this morning because they paywalled me, fuckers. They're so inconsistent about that too. You can't predict which one's going to hit paywall and which one isn't. All right. Well, let's move on and see what CNBC has to say. Stocks look set to add to the Dow's record as futures inch higher. Tech shares gain. From Pippa Stevens. U.S. stock futures gained slightly early Thursday after the Dow closed at a record in the prior session. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average added 55 points. S&P 500 futures rose 0.2%. NASDAQ 100 futures gained 0.3% as tech shares looked set to rebound from a series of losses. PayPal shares jumped 4% in pre-market trading to lead tech names after the company posted better than expected earnings and said revenue last quarter surged 31%. And you guys have some of that too, because a couple of you guys have been starting to pay me through PayPal, so good on you for holding them up, I guess. Tech stocks in general looked set to rebound after the NASDAQ Composite posted its fourth straight negative session on Wednesday for its longest daily losing streak since October. The tech-heavy NASDAQ and S&P 500 are each lower for the week. The Dow is on track to break a 2-week losing streak. Netflix, Amazon, and Facebook were among the tech names that declined on Wednesday, each falling more than 1%. These shares were rebounding slightly in pre-market trading on Thursday. Apple and Tesla shares were also higher in early trading. However, Etsy tanked by 11% in early trading after warning that sales will slow as the pandemic boost wanes. Shares of The Gap, which have been popping in the last month, along with other specialty retailers as investors bet on a return to more in-person shopping, was higher again, up about 2% in early trading. During Wednesday's session, the Dow gained 97 points to end at a new closing high. The 30-stock benchmark index also set a new intraday record after rising nearly 200 points at one point. It's too early to say whether the early gains Thursday will mark a reversal in the trend. Tech sector earnings momentum relative to the broader market peaked in late May of 2020. Keith Lerner, the chief market strategist at Truist, given that we expect the economy to grow well above the trend this year and next, value stands to benefit. Indeed, when looking at the value indices, they're dominated by financials and tend to have greater exposure to economically sensitive sectors that are more leveraged to an economic recovery. The Russell 1000 Value Index has gained 16% this year, while the Russell 1000 Growth Index has advanced 5%. On the data front, initial jobless claims will be released on Thursday. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones are expecting a print of 527,000. The data comes a day before April's jobs report is released on Friday. I can't believe they're calling this a recovery and we're still losing 527,000 jobs a week. Job growth has been strong and increasing for the past 3 months. April's employment numbers are expected to show another significant gain, as layoffs were down by a sixth during the month, noted Brad McMillan, Chief Investment Officer for Commonwealth Financial Network. However, he added that concerns still remain in the market. For one, federal stimulus packages have boosted growth. At some point, the economy will have to return to organic growth. The busiest week of earnings is now in the rearview mirror, but a number of companies have yet to provide their quarterly updates. So we'll see what's happening on the stocks here. Looks like Doge is up 12,000%, by the way. That's kind of cool. 12,000% on $20 isn't, well, it's not horrible. All right. Let's get into the big news of the day. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And let's talk about the vax. Starting with CNN. U.S. supports vaccine patent waiver proposal at World Trade Organization. From Kevin Liptak. The Biden admin, in a major decision on Wednesday, said it would support easing patent rules on COVID-19 vaccines after intense internal debate and strong pushback from American drug makers, potentially expanding the global supply and narrowing the vaccination gap between rich and poor nations. The move is preliminary and will not guarantee that global patent rules are lifted right away, but the Biden admin's signal for support amounts to a major step that aid groups and Democrats have been pressing for. The administration believes strongly in intellectual property protections, but in service of ending this pandemic supports the waiver of those protections for COVID-19 vaccines. U.S. Trade Rep. Catherine Tai wrote in a statement, President Biden and Ty have been weighing the issue after calls from global advocacy groups and progressives to support waivers on the World Trade Organization rules that have been proposed by India and South Africa. Biden, as a candidate, promised to support such waivers, but had been under pressure from the pharmaceutical companies to keep them in place. Because, of course, they were under pressure from Big Pharma to keep them in place. In the lead up to Wednesday's decision, administration officials, led by Ty, met with more than 24 stakeholders in the vaccine patent debate, according to an official that included trade partners, health experts and advocates, labor groups, and the major vaccine manufacturers. Once the information they gleaned was compiled, the department presented options to Biden, who ultimately decided to put on pants for the day and get out of his depends. I'm sorry, that's not what it says. Who ultimately decided to support the waiver in line with the campaign pledge. Officials were clear, however, that patent rules will not immediately be eased on Wednesday's decision. Members of the WTO must unanimously decide whether to loosen the restrictions, and while the U.S. had been a holdout, other countries, including the EU and Switzerland, have also resisted the step. The admin's aim is to get as many safe and effective vaccines to as many people as fast as possible, Ty said in her statement. As our vaccine supply for the American people is secured, the admin will continue to ramp up its efforts, working with the private sector and possible partners to expand the vaccine manufacturing and distribution. It will also work to increase the raw materials needed to produce those vaccines. So, a lot of stuff going on in just half of this article here, and of course, all the real information is going to be all the way to the bottom because it's fucking CNN, but there's already a lot of stuff going on in this, and now we look at the fact, and, well, first and foremost, we actually look at who bought and paid for Beijing fucking Biden, and it is, in part, the U.S. billionaires. For large amounts of his life, he is bought and paid for by China, but he's also bought and paid for by U.S. billionaires. They're kind of in a bidding war against the guy, and this has got to be a big stab in the back to them. And, CNBC didn't dare to say this because it goes against their great and glorious leader. As much and as impartial as CNBC can be, they are still owned by the same conglomerate as MSNBC, which means they do have to maintain the idea that Joe Biden can do nothing wrong because he came out and he saved us from the evil orange man. Hallowed be his name, Joe Biden, a hero for heroes, that kind of bullshit. But, with that, we do look at a lot of things with this, and, you started to see the big pharma stocks tank, because it does look like, and there have been other people that have brought this up too, talking about this. I was listening to Styx yesterday, and he pointed out the fact that, all of a sudden, we have these vaccines out, and nobody gives the credit to the Donald for Operation Warp Speed, because, of course, if you listen to him now, Operation Warp Speed was all Biden's idea, and Donald had nothing to do with it, then Biden is solely 100% responsible for getting every vaccine in the arm of every American out there. Solely 100% responsible. But once you start to look back at this, it's, we suddenly go from everybody needs to get the vaccine and you need to have the vaccine passport. We can sell more vaccines. Oh, hey, this might become a yearly vaccine. How much more money can we get out of this vaccine here? But now, if the patents go away, every fucking third party in Bangladesh and China and India and Taiwan and all these other countries that don't have the same kind of restrictions or anything else as this country does, where the big pharma are essentially headquartered, well, they can just start pumping this shit back out. So it'll be interesting to see. It is definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with this and where it goes. But, I don't know. Once again, once we come to the fact that, big business billionaires have bought and paid for Biden, which, here's my stutter coming back up because I barely slept last night, and I'm going to start talking like Biden here, man. And it's just a childhood stutter, man. It's nothing to worry about. And I'm not in cognitive decline, man. So, we'll see what happens with that. I've got another one here, and it is from NPR on the same topic. Biden backs waiving international patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. This is from Emma Bowman and Ashish Valentine. Hey, make sure that you give us the money over here at NPR because we need your money. We need more of your money because then we can turn around and give that along with free advertising to people like Biden who we also would like to buy and pay for. But the taxpayer money isn't enough and we need your donations as well. So NPR, National Progressive Radio. We love Biden. He's a hero. Let's see what NPR has to say. I read the headline already. President Biden threw his support behind a WTO proposal on Wednesday to waive intellectual property protections for COVID-19 vaccines, clearing a hurdle for vaccine-strapped countries to manufacture their own vaccines even though the patents are privately held. This is a global health crisis. Is this Biden? No, it's Catherine Tai. This is a global health crisis, and the extraordinary circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic call for extraordinary measures, U.S. Trade Rep Catherine Tai said in a statement. The admin believes strongly in intellectual property protections, but in the service of ending this pandemic, supports the waiver of those protections for COVID-19 vaccines. The pace of vaccinating against the commie fucking coof in the U.S. is slowing down. In some cases, there are more vaccine doses than people who want them. Meanwhile, India is now the epicenter of the pandemic, and just 2% of the population is fully vaccinated. The World Trade Organization is considering a proposal to address that inequality as India, South Africa, and more than 100 other nations advocate to waive intellectual property rights for the commie fucking coof vaccine and medications, which might let manufacturers in other countries make their own. The consequences of not passing the waiver are staggering. Mustaqim Degama, South Africa's World Trade Organization counselor, told NPR, not only on the level of the loss of human lives, but on the economic level. We believe that intellectual property rights constitute a very substantial barrier to ensure equitable access, he said. We believe that if we could have a limited, targeted waiver to ensure that we can ramp up production in various parts of the world, we would go a long way to ensure that we address not only the prevention, but also the treatment of COVID-19. Well, you seem to have some of the world's supply of anti-malarial drugs, too. Keep that in mind, so we'll see what's going on with that. Previous to Wednesday's announcements, the U.S. was among several other wealthy nations, including the UK, Canada, and Japan, that resisted WTO negotiations about the proposal. In response to the admin's support, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, a drug industry trade group, expressed strong opposition and argued that the move represents a break in long-standing U.S. policy over medical patents amid global inequities. It's not inequality, it's inequity. And of course, Big Pharma and their trade group, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, of course they're going to be opposed to this because they are about to lose a butt ton of fucking money. Follow the money. Always follow the money. But hey, make sure that you guys all go get that jab because they need you to have the vaccine, you guys. And honestly, and as I've said before, really honestly, if you guys decide that you need it, I'm not going to think any less of you. Because a lot of people feel that they need it. They need it to go see grandma. Grandma won't let the grandkids come over unless you get it. They're essentially holding you hostage at this point. But there are a lot of people that do believe that they need it. And I am not going to think less of anybody who decides that they want to go out and get it. I'm just not going to go get it. Because it's my body and it's my choice. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday because I was kind of, I thought it was kind of cool that, okay, they got this out of here. The Free Enterprise of America came out and the Free Enterprise of America won. Capitalism won as far as the vaccine goes because they got the FDA out of the way for the most part. They were still there. They still had to emergency authorize these things, but the Trump administration got the FDA out of the way. And they got something to market much, much faster than anything else. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's see how much better this works without the government intrusion. And then they started talking about that M word. And as soon as they said mandatory, even in a sense that was theoretically mandatory. Hey, we might actually make this mandatory to participate in day-to-day life. I said, nope, I'm out. Fuck that. As soon as they said the M word, every tinfoil sensor in my head started going off all at once, and, it started telling me, ulterior motive, ulterior motive, ulterior motive. And it also screams of ulterior motive to me at this point that they're also looking at making this a worldwide thing, making sure everybody in the world gets it as well. So, I mean, every tinfoil sensor in my head is just screaming right now. Especially if the Biden admin is willing to go back and plunge the knife in the back of one of its biggest donors. Especially at that point. There is something else going on here, and you know what? If I don't get the common fucking coup vaccine for 5 years, I'm not even that concerned about it. I'll wait. All right, let's keep going. Here's some cringe for you for the morning. Alabama Public Health tweets out, Darth Vader wears a mask to help himself. Thank you for continuing to wear a mask to help those around you. Hashtag may the 4th be with you. This is a couple days old, but this started making the rounds on social media yesterday, and it is surprisingly cringe, but I mean, the left in this country, especially the progressive left that believes that everyone needs to wear the mask and have the comic coup. They really are the fucking empire at this point. They sit back here and they think that they're the Rebel Alliance. They think that they're the good guys. They think that they're Luke and Han and Leia. They're not. They are Vader and Sidious and Tarkov. So, hope you guys would enjoy that. From CNBC, another big piece of financial news coming back out of here. Federal judge overturns national eviction ban. I actually had a, 2-hour conversation with Seawall in the Discord yesterday. We just sat back and we talked about where this could go. And we were also talking a bit about how he can improve his home as well, which he thinks he's got to go pay a bunch of people to do. And I'm like, dude, I'll come down to San Antonio and fucking do it for you because you don't need to pay a bunch of people to do this. And you don't need to wait until you win the lottery and get rich. We can do it, on Tuesday. Probably not on Tuesday because I don't have that much vacation time and I need to drive down there. And driving down there, I would miss you guys. But I think we're going to plan something here and help him get this all set up because, pay somebody to run Ethernet cable through your house. That's not how we do things where I come from. All right, but let's talk about this, though, instead of my weird anecdotes about my life. From Annie Nova, federal judge Dabney Friedrich struck down on Wednesday the national eviction moratorium, potentially leaving millions of Americans at risk of losing their homes 2 months earlier than expected. The CDC has banned most evictions across the country since September. The protection was slated to expire at the end of January, but President Biden has extended it, first until April and later through June. Some 1 in 5 renters across the U.S. are struggling to keep up with their payments amid the coronavirus pandemic, and states are scrambling to disperse more than $45 billion in rental assistance allocated by Congress. A spokesman for the Department of Justice said it planned to appeal the ruling. It also seeks a stay of the decision, meaning the ban would remain in effect throughout the court battle. Well, this is going to get interesting, I can tell you that. Speaking at her daily briefing, the White House spokesperson Jen Psaki said the Biden admin recognized the importance of the eviction moratorium for Americans who've fallen behind on rent during the commie fucking coup. A recent study estimates that there were 1.55 million fewer evictions filed during 2020 than would be expected due to the eviction moratorium, so it clearly has a huge benefit, Psaki said. Oh yeah, no, these people have people living in the homes that they pay the mortgage on, or could be paying the mortgage on in the future, because I don't know if there is a federal, that was a point of contention between Seawall and I, because I thought there was a federal moratorium on foreclosure, but I think that might be more local. I've not had a chance to go back and look in on this, but Yep. Even if it's just a local one, yes, these people, some of the people in some of the states that don't have the foreclosure moratorium are paying mortgage on these properties that they're not getting anything the fuck back out of. So yeah, it's got a huge benefit for people who want to sit in some place long enough for squatters' rights. And interestingly enough, because I am taking real estate courses right now, that's one of the things that's coming up on this is squatters' rights and the fact that if you, I think it's like 5 years. If you have a property somewhere and somebody goes back and moves in, puts up an address, gets it registered in there, you do go back and check on them for like 5 years, they technically own the property that they just kind of moved in on for you. So always go check on your property. But I bet you we're getting close to the point where we're going to look at squatters' rights for some of these properties as well, which that's going to open up a whole new can of beans coming up with this. But on the other side of this, if we look at this and this starts to go through, first and foremost, it's not like the world isn't going to be homeless tomorrow. I can tell you that. Eviction does take time. And depending on your state laws, you might also have the state stay that comes into this as well. Like I know in Wisconsin. If you have an eviction, before anything can happen, the property owner needs to give you 30 days notice, posted prominently at the entrance that you most likely use. So they can't just come in like your parents did when you were 19 and you called them a nasty name. They can't just come in and move all your stuff out to the lawn. They have to give you a full 30 days notice, and according to Wisconsin law, they can't even come in and enter if you're in the eviction process. So for 30 days, that's what they have. And then, yes, they can forcibly move you. And I'm sure that there are going to be other state laws that fall under that as well. So you'll start to see the notices. But yeah, I got a feeling that if this does stay, if they don't put a stay on this, that I would say by the time you get through all the legal battles, which the courts are going to be fucking packed on top of this, and socially distanced, so they're going to be having fewer hearings coming off, I would say that come October, you're going to start to see a lot of homeless people. A lot of mommies and daddies are going to have to start cleaning out their basements so more of their 30-some-year-old children can move in. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's keep reading. Housing advocates have said that the national ban is necessary to stave off an unprecedented displacement of Americans, which could worsen the pandemic just as the country is turning a corner. Yeah, well, they keep moving the goalposts too, because we're always just turning a corner. We've been turning a corner since January 21st. Researchers have found that allowing evictions to continue in certain states caused as many as 433,700 excess cases of the commie fucking coup and 10,700 additional deaths in the U.S. between March and September. I would love to see some statistics on that. Before the CDC ban went into effect nationwide, at least 2 other federal judges have questioned the CDC's power to ban evictions, and landlords have criticized the policy, saying they can't afford to continue housing people for free. The decision by Friedrich of the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia, who was appointed to the court in 2017 by former President Donald Trump, is a victory for the property owners who've challenged the CDC's moratorium. Diane Yentl, the president and CEO of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, said she was confident the judge's ruling wouldn't strip renters across the country of the CDC's protection. Several court rulings have attempted to strike down the moratorium, but all have had a limited application, Yentl said. While this ruling is written more starkly than the previous ones, it has equally limited application, impacting only the plaintiffs who brought the case. So, a lot of stuff that's going on with this, and a lot of stuff to move. So, and yeah, now we look at the LA County Sheriff's Department. Notice to vacate. There are a lot of things that are going to happen with this. There are a lot. This is not going to be just some simple thing. First and foremost, there are going to be... Well, actually, let's look at this reasonably for just a half a second. When we look at this, when we see what's going on with this, there are a lot of people who looked at this and said, I don't have to pay rent. I can go better myself, or I don't think they went off and paid loans at this point, but I can go better myself and get new clothes and get a new car, blah, 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 this, that, and the next thing here, because I don't have to pay rent right now because they said there's an eviction moratorium. There are going to be the people who just decided not to do so because the government said it was okay. There are always going to be people who take advantage of that situation. But there are also people who haven't worked, or who have worked a little bit, that also know that they can't get evicted, so they're throwing that money into food instead of their rent. But now we're looking back, and I don't think this is, honestly, as big of a problem as the government seems to think this is as well. I would bet that this actually probably affects less than 1% of renters. Because for the most part, the people who are working from home threw the money back in, the people who had the essential jobs threw the money back in, and the people who already weren't working already couldn't afford their electric, they couldn't afford their food, and they've already moved back in with their parents. Not because of the rent overhead, but because of the fact that they got their free meal from going back to mommy and daddy. I would be willing to bet that this is not going to make as big of a dent as there is. And I haven't missed a single rent payment through this. Through the entire commie fucking coup. I haven't missed a single one. Because I went to work every day. And because you guys have graciously thrown me a couple bucks here and there too. Links in the chat and in the description if you guys want to throw me a couple. But I have not missed a single payment. Not one. And I know that the vast majority of Americans are in that same boat. But if this is as bad as Seawall seems to think that it is, then we're also going to see a lot of drop in rent prices. Because there are the renters like me who didn't miss a single payment. And there are a lot more, if this is as bad as Seawall thinks, people who have probably thousands of dollars in debt to their landlords. And nobody else is going to touch them with a 10-foot pole. Until at least, now, of course, we're going to see the contracts and the commie coup where people look at this and say, oh, well, you got evicted in May of 2021. Oh, well, we won't look at that one here because, extenuating circumstances, there's going to be that. But they won't want to touch anybody until that person has paid off their rent to the previous landlord. The eviction won't matter as much, but the payoff of the rent will. And if this is as bad as Seawall thinks, then we're going to start to see some rent prices drop. Because it's better to have somebody in there. Even if you're renting an apartment to somebody at a loss. Like, say, the little bitty place that I live in, $625 a month. Which I'm guessing is because it costs probably a little bit less than what we're all paying in rent for the property owners to keep the roof over our heads. Their mortgage is probably just a little bit less than what they're taking in for rent, once you figure insurance in. But it's better to keep an ass in an apartment at a loss for these people than it is to have no money coming in at all. So you could see a place like this going for $300 at some point. Something to think about as we move into and see what's going to happen in the next few months. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's grab one from the Washington Post. Archived, of course, in a nod to statehood bid, Bowser admitted to Democratic Governors Association. From Michael Bryce Sadler. The Democratic Governors Association on Tuesday welcomed D.C. Mayor Muriel E. Bowser into its ranks, marking the latest effort by Democratic leaders to support making the district the nation's 51st state. Announcing the move on CNN, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, who chairs the association, acknowledged that Bowser is not a governor, but citing the mayor's role in advocating for D.C. residents and combating the coronavirus pandemic in the city. Lujan Grisham asserted that Bowser is ready for an executive leader is already an executive leader in the district, working for all things Democratic governors are responsible for. Lujan Grisham's announcement comes days after Senator Joe Manchin dealt a blow to statehood advocates by announcing he does not support legislation that would admit D.C. as a state. Dude, it doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference if he supports it or not. He could come out waving flags that say D.C. statehood in a great big red, white, and blue suit that says 51st state on it. And it wouldn't make a goddamn lick of difference because the district is constitutionally relegated as a federal district and not a state. And it cannot be a state. And once again, Nancy Pelosi tries to find the workaround. Well, okay. The federal buildings are still going to be the federal district, and it's not going to become a state as long as the federal buildings are, because the Constitution says that. No, that's not true, because you still need a municipality to maintain your waterworks, to maintain your power. You are still beholden to this mysterious and new 51st state. You're not going to put a power plant on the fucking mall. It's not going to happen. You're not going to put a water treatment facility on the mall. You're definitely not going to use the reflecting pool as your water treatment facility. You need to have a municipality. It wasn't just the fact that they wanted the federal government to be in a district in and of itself and not beholden to a state. They wanted the district to be fully autonomous, which means it needs Department of Public Works, power, water. Back at the time, they needed horse crap cleanup. All municipal jobs. You can't just sidestep this because you think it'll get you 2 new fucking senators. So, we'll see what happens with that. From CNN. Facebook tried to punt the Trump decision. That backfired. This is an op-ed from Donnie O'Sullivan. The Facebook Oversight Board was designed to make some of Facebook's most difficult decisions for the company. But on Wednesday, the board put one of the biggest dilemmas facing the platform back on Facebook and company CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The board said that Facebook was right to suspend Trump in the immediate aftermath of the January 6th Capitol Selfie Fest, but said Boomerbook couldn't just make the suspension indefinite with no actual rule on the books for allowing that. The board said Boomerbook must review the decision and figure out if Trump should be banned from the platform forever. The board could have made that decision itself. To some, it might appear that, in doing so, it was trying to pass the buck, but not wanting to make a controversial call or test its authority. But by choosing to hand the decision back to Facebook, it put Zuckerberg's powerful role in overseeing public discourse in the United States in the spotlight, along with the arbitrary nature of how Facebook moderates its platform. Forcing Boomerbook to make the decision was in itself an exercise of the board's power and independence. The decision was in many ways not just about Trump. It may ultimately be more important for parts that were really only secondarily about him. The ruling was shot across Facebook's bow, warning the company that it has to get its house in order and can no longer make the world-altering decisions on the fly. So, a couple things happened yesterday after we got off the air. Number one, the Facebook Board of Review said that they were going to uphold the Trump suspension. But they also came back and told Zuckerberg that he couldn't just do an indefinite and then come back and decide at a later date. It's not an indefinite suspension. He's either got to be permabanned and have that placed in the records, or they have to let him back on. Because they can't keep him in fucking limbo forever, as much as they'd like to. And they have to give him a definitive reason why, which I think they've got. But yeah, they can't just come back and lick their fingers and stick it in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. They've actually got to make a decision about this one. So I'm sure that puts Zuckerberg behind the fucking 8 ball. So we'll see what happens with that. But That's definitely going to be fun to see. Let's grab one from Politico. Trumpland thought he'd get back on Facebook. Now they're anxious and scrambling. From Meredith McGraw. Republicans on Wednesday expressed outrage over the news that Trump's Facebook suspension would remain in place for a long time. Privately, many of them, including some close to the former president, were panicked. The ruling by the Boomer Book Oversight Board meant that Trump would remain off the platform for the foreseeable future and perhaps well beyond should the company make the ban permanent. In practical terms, the main driver of the Republican Party enthusiasm would be less omnipresent in voters' lives, a reality that sparked fear for some GOP operatives. As for Trump, he would remain without one of the great money-raising spigots in all of politics as his political operation geared up for a possible 2024 run. This is a huge decision, makes it infinitely harder for him to raise money, conceded a person, unnamed of course, close to the Trump operation. It was Mary Trump's 34th cousin, twice removed, that lives in the middle of New Mexico, is the person close to the Trump operation. Facebook was the main way he raised money. Facebook was the main way he raised money. Dude could sell a building and buy and fucking sell Facebook. He's now going to have to spend far more in the future to find other ways to raise money. It was the main way he found donors. Dude could sell a building and buy and sell Facebook. Just so you know. Trump's official line in response to the ruling showed no concern or the financial ramifications of it. Though some anxiety about how it could impact his ability to communicate with his hordes of followers, he accused Facebook, Twitter, and Google of taking away his free speech, called them corrupt, and demanded that they pay a political price. But it was clear that money matters were on his team's mind. Shortly after the official statement was released, the Trump operation blasted out a text message to its list calling Facebook ban nonsense, but also asked for money. I want a list of all donors sent to my office, the text read. Not everyone in the party felt that Trump would end up in a worse place because of the continued Facebook ban. The president still has one of the biggest email lists in politics, even if it will atrophy without access to the country's largest social media platforms, and in the tech industry, he has a bête noire to rail against. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich said the Facebook decision would ultimately help Trump by making him a tech martyr. Not only that, it's not going to help him because it makes him a tech martyr. See, politically, this actually does help Trump in a very, very big way. Because who, in reality, if you look back over the last 5 years, who was Trump's worst enemy? I'll give you a hint. He was big and orange and had a horrible fucking comb over. That's who Trump's worst enemy was. Donald J. Trump was Donald J. Trump's worst enemy throughout his presidency. Because as much as, he actually did good things policy-wise. He did very, very good things policy-wise. And he did acquire a horde of cult-like followers who would defend him until the ends of the earth. But then he would go out and say something fucking stupid on Twitter. Something absolutely fucking stupid over on Twitter. And just shoot himself in the foot. And honestly, policy-wise, he's a smart guy. I know that all of his detractors are like, no, he's a big fucking orange retard. And he's simultaneously an evil mastermind. And he's a retarded version of Hitler at the same time. But really, when you think about it, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which threw the economy into overdrive without inflating the currency a huge amount. We got a little bit of inflation. We can't argue that. But for the most part, yeah, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and then opening up the oil spigots in America, Everyone was going to work. We had millions of unfilled jobs throughout everywhere. But he just couldn't shut up. If I didn't think for a second that Trump 2024 would turn into the same fucking reality show that we saw from 2016 onto 2020, I would probably vote for him again. I know it's unpopular among some people who sometimes appear on the same screen, but I would probably do it again if I knew that we weren't going to watch the same fucking soap opera again. But what's more interesting about this article, and going back to the top, given the fact that, Trumpland thought that he'd get back on Facebook. Now they're anxious and scrambling. Yes, they did. I mean, a quick look through Twitter yesterday and the day before would probably tell you that a lot of MAGA people came out and said, we're going to get Trump back, we're going to get Trump back. But conversely, and this is the part that Politico won't tell you about, and we talked about this yesterday morning, that was what I opened the show with, was that AntiTrumpland thought that Facebook needed to burn to the fucking ground because they were about to let Trump back on. Oh my God, it's horrible. Now, those people are taking a victory lap, and Trumpland thinks that all of Section 230 needs to be repealed, removed, and they need to let Trump back on because they're violating his free speech. All that this showed is that nobody has any sort of consistency whatsoever. So, that's what we're seeing from that. I got a tweet here from Parker Malloy, R.E. Charlie Kirk. Parker Malloy tweets out, Charlie Kirk is an idiot, which he is. Because Charlie Kirk tweeted out, though, and she screenshotted it. She didn't quote tweet it, she screenshotted it because she knew that he was about to turn around and block her. Charlie Kirk tweets out, the U.S. Supreme Court should overturn Facebook's Oversight Board's ruling, which upholds the outlawing of the 45th President of the United States from social media. This is a big tech corporate oligarchy without standing, and it's gone too far. Enough is enough. Now, a couple things can be true at once, but I've got the law and crime rebuttal to this, but really, honestly, a lot of people are getting on Kirk's case because the Supreme Court can't overturn this decision. They're a private company. Ha 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 ha. Well, see, they actually can. Because when you do the terms of use, you sign a de facto contract. And I would be willing to bet right now that the Trump legal team, sans Rudolph Giuliani because he's too busy fighting his own FBI battles, but the Trump legal team right now is going through the terms of use, looking for a breach of contract, which they will turn around and take back into a lower court first. They'll sue for standing. They might not get it, but they'll sue for standing. They'll take it to a lower court. And if they don't get the decision that they want, they'll take it up, and this might actually wind up in the Supreme Court. So we'll see what happens with that. All right. From Law and Crime. The single dumbest legal take of all time, Charlie Kirk calls for Supreme Court to get Trump back on Facebook. Staunch Trump ally and right-wing activist Charlie Kirk responded to the Facebook Oversight Board decision on Wednesday to uphold Trump's ban from the social media platform by saying that the Supreme Court of the U.S. should intervene and get Trump back on Facebook. In case you missed it, the board upheld Facebook's January 7th suspension of Trump for glorifying violence in the aftermath of the January 6th siege. What the board did not approve of was the open-ended and indefinite way in which the former president of the U.S. was banned. It is not permissible for Facebook to keep a user off the platform for an undefined period, with no criteria for when or whether the account will be restored, the board's findings said. Basically, they told him to shit or get off the pot. And they're going to come back on, and they're going to do the same thing. Well, it's stupid for the Supreme Court to come out and say this. Well, a couple things with that. Number one, the Supreme Court did rule that Trump's Twitter, and not his Facebook, but his Twitter, is public domain, which means that he is an elected official, cannot block anybody, because they do need to have the ability to have access to him. They don't have to have the access to him, but they have to have the ability if they want it, which means that he can't block anybody from seeing his Twitter feed. And what happened with Facebook seems to fly in the face of that right now. Now, he is a private citizen, so there may be some different standing with that. And that's where first off, that's where Kirk thinks that he should take this to the Supreme Court. But second off with that, that is going to be where the standing comes by. Does this still count as a private citizen for him? So we'll see what happens with that. All right. Let's go from Fox News. Top Republicans McCarthy, Scalise back Stefanik as Cheney replacement amid battle over Trump. I heard some grumblings about this yesterday. I don't know who Stefanik is, but I think a couple of you guys do. So let's see what's going on with this from Tyler Olson. The top two Republicans in the House are behind Representative Elise Stefanik's efforts to replace Liz Cheney as Republican conference chair, as the party continues to grapple over former President Trump's future role, according to a report. Fox News confirmed Tuesday that Stefanik is making calls to members to build support for such a challenge. To Cheney of Wyoming, a senior GOP leadership source told Fox News earlier this week, a vote to remove Cheney is more than likely. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, a spokesman for Lauren Fine, told Fox News Wednesday that House Republicans need to be solely focused on taking back the House in 2022, and Elise Stefanik is strongly committed to doing that, which is why Whip Scalise has pledged to support her for conference chair. Punchbowl News, which first reported Scalise's support for Stefanik, also reported Wednesday that Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is working to ensure Stefanik is the only one challenging Cheney. Trump also supports Stefanik to replace Cheney as the House GOP conference chair, sources close to former president tell Fox News. So it looks like this is going to be the one who's coming up. Where in New York is this woman's district? Because I can't imagine that a Republican has a lot of chance in the city anywhere. But I find it kind of weird that they keep calling... No, Amash didn't make it back in. Never mind. I was going to say, I find it kind of weird that they keep calling McCarthy the minority leader, because I think Bernie or Amash would be the minority leader at this point, because they are in the true minority. Bernie is an independent running as a socialist, and Amash at the time was actually libertarian proper, also independent. They're the minorities in the party, in the chamber, not McCarthy. So I guess we'll see what happens for this. I don't know enough about this woman to know if this is going to be a good thing or not. It does seem that, according to CNN, she's a big Trumper, so I could take that or leave that. As long as she's fighting for the people, I could still possibly see supporting the woman. Let's see what CNN has to say. Elise Stefanik's rapid rise as Trump supporter highlights the Trump takeover of the GOP. Looks like it's Staten Island. Okay. I didn't think that would be a possibility for somebody coming out of the city proper to run with an R next to their name and make it into the House. I guess I've never been to the city proper, though, either, so I can't really judge on that. All right, from Claire Ferran and Lauren Fox. GOP Rep. Elise Stefanik now appears poised to become the next House Republican Conference Chairwoman as the party unites against Liz Cheney for calling out former President Trump's big lie that the 2020 election was stolen. I hate the fact, by the way, that this was what it took for people to pay attention to the fact that there's a Cheney, a fucking Warhawk's daughter, in House leadership for the Republican Party. Why did it have to be this that brought this back out, and not the fact that all this woman does is get wet and fucking flick the bean over the fact that we might go back into the Middle East? The New York Congresswoman's rise within the party and embrace of Trump in recent years represents an evolution that mirrors that of her party, which coalesced behind Trump and remains loyal to him even with the former president no longer in office after Lie, 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 lie. The GOP's decision to elevate Stefanik and reject Cheney makes clear that Trump is still in the driver's seat of the party and illustrates the consequences that Republicans, even those who have been in leadership positions or have storied family history in the GOP, can face if they choose to vocally oppose the former president. Well, good. Get some of these fucking warhawks and their children back out of the fucking chamber. Get rid of these people. They have no place in positive discourse anymore. Rapid rise. It's horrifying. A Trump person. All right. From the New York Times. Speaking of the former president, who has had more airtime on this channel today than he has in the last several months. And I hate myself for that, by the way. Judge says Barr misled on how his Justice Department viewed Trump's actions. From Michael S. Schmidt. A federal judge in Washington accused the Justice Department under Attorney General William P. Barr of misleading her and Congress about advice he had received from the top department officials on whether President Donald J. Trump should have been charged with obstructing the Russia investigation and ordered that a related memo be released. Judge Amy Berman Jackson of the U.S. District Court in Washington said in a ruling late Monday that the Justice Department's obfuscation appeared to be part of a pattern in which top officials like Mr. Barr were untruthful to Congress and the public about the investigation. Excuse me. The department had argued that the memo was exempt from public record laws because it consisted of private advice from lawyers whom Mr. Barr had relied on to make the call on persecuting Mr. Trump, but Judge Jackson, who was appointed by President Barack Obama in 2011, ruled that the memo contained strategic advice and that Mr. Barr and his aides already understood what the decision would be. The fact that he would not be prosecuted was a given, Judge Jackson wrote of Mr. Trump. She also singled out that Mr. Barr for how he had spun the investigation's findings in a letter summarizing the 448-page report before it was released, which allowed Mr. Trump to claim he had been exonerated. He had. I've read the report. See, Mr. Schmidt here is counting on the fact that you have never read the report. He's counting on the fact that you come to the New York Times, a former newspaper, to tell you exactly what to think about the Orange Man. I've read the report front to back, and there was no collusion. The Attorney General's characterizations of what he'd hardly had time to skim, much less study closely, prompted an immediate reaction as politicians and pundits took to their microphones and Twitter feeds to decry what they feared was an attempt to hide the ball, Judge Jackson wrote. There was no ball to fucking hide. I've read the Mueller report cover to cover. There was no collusion, according to the report. So, but now she's going to come back out because, for whatever reason, Bill Barr is a Trump ally again. We'll figure out what's going on with that. He's the fucking swamp, and I don't know why he ever got hired, but he is the swamp. And now we will sit here and see them go back and forth over this. All right, from WESH, NBC2, out of someplace that's really, really warm, probably Florida. We're funding the police, Governor DeSantis announces a $1,000 bonus for first responders. From no author given. Governor Ron DeSantis announced $1,000 bonuses for the first responders at a press conference in Brevard County Wednesday afternoon. During the press conference, DeSantis said police officers, firefighters, paramedics will all receive the bonus. DeSantis said the bonus will be included in the budget once it's signed. It's unclear when the bonuses will be delivered. According to the governor's office, the money to pay for the $1,000 bonuses for first responders comes from the federal rescue plan. Money passed by Congress, that money is then allocated by the state.
It's today.
And that's all the news that I have off of this. But even still, it's based. Now, here's the reality. Going back to this. We still have way too many laws on the books for stuff that's not a crime. Get rid of all that shit. And then you won't need as many police officers. Just all of it fucking gone. Your penal code should be entirely don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. Entirely. Nothing else. So that's what we're seeing from that. I always love that too. You know, these progressives, and even some of the libertarians, you know who you are all about defund, abolish the police. We shouldn't need any police. I do think that some of the more true libertarians are more on the idea of we need private police, not the state having the monopoly on violence. But I still think that if there are laws on the books, that the state is responsible for enforcing them. And they shouldn't rely on private industry to enforce their unconstitutional laws. But I also noticed that it's easier for progressives to come back out and blame another blue-collar worker faction, because they really do hate the blue-collar workers. It's easier for them to come out and blame another blue-collar worker faction and not the politicians who make the laws. You ever notice that? All right. But that's what's coming out of Florida from CNN. A New Jersey high school teacher is filmed referring to George Floyd as a criminal and cursing at students. From Alexandra Field and Scotty Andrew. Scotty doesn't know. A New Jersey high school teacher has been suspended with pay after launching into a rant during 2 virtual classes in which he allegedly called George Floyd a criminal and used profanity against his students. Howard Zlotkin, a science teacher at William Dickinson High School in New Jersey City, is also accused of singling out black students to write an essay on why Black Lives Matter, according to the high school senior who filmed his comments last week. Yeah, see, you can't do that. The bottom line is, we make Floyd a fucking hero. He's not a hero. He's a criminal. Zlotkin said at the beginning of the clip his students recorded. Do I have video of this? I do not. Okay. I hoped I did. I'll look and see if I can find some of that. Maybe we'll look at it tomorrow. Zlotkin went on, you guys emulate people that are just fucking wrong, that are criminals, and you're making them right because they're black, or they've got a bad story. In the screen grab from a video filmed by one of his students, Jersey City science teacher Howard Zlotkin told said student that he was full of shit and he couldn't defend the Black Lives Matter movement. The student who captured his rant, Tamia Williams, said the initial topic of discussion in Zlotkin's landscaping and design class was climate change. It's not clear when the conversation veered towards Floyd before Tamia started filming, but she said as her teacher continued to make inflammatory comments, she decided to record them in case the school officials wouldn't believe her. I've never really been in a situation where people are speaking bad of other people's race, she told CNN. It really bothered me. Yeah, that's probably true, too. And yeah, you probably shouldn't be going on a rant like that. And that's not to say that Floyd wasn't a criminal. But I'm not a teacher who's tasked with being completely objective either. You guys came here knowing exactly the way I felt about Floyd, and some of you in support of it. So, he wasn't a hero. That doesn't make the situation right either. But he wasn't a hero. Absolutely. You also can't curse at your students. You really should not be doing that. So, I guess we'll see what happens with that. All right, from the Tennessean. Tennessee bans public schools from teaching critical race theory amid national debate. From Natalie Allison. The Tennessee General Assembly has banned the teaching of critical race theory, passing a law at the very end of the legislative session, withholding funding from public schools that teach about white privilege. Republicans in the House made the legislation a last-minute priority, introducing provisions that ban schools from instructing students that one race bears responsibility for past actions against another, the U.S. is fundamentally racist, or that a person is inherently privileged or oppressive due to their race. Similar proposals surfaced in other states this year, including one in Idaho that has been signed into law by the governor. Texas Republicans are also pushing a proposal to ban CRT in schools. Now juxtapose this against the article that we just read, where the black students are complaining that Mr. Zlotkin made them write an essay just because they were black. They were singled out and forced to write an essay on why Black Lives Matter. And now apply the same logic to what we're seeing right now, where schools across the country are expecting white children to sit down, shut up, and hear that they're racist and how horrible they are, no matter how good they've treated other people throughout their entire lives, how horrible they are. And tell me why this is different. Tell me why this is different. Good on Tennessee. I hope to see more of this. All right. From ABC News. Maybe. I just have a blank page here. Oh, my browser's locked too, so. Yep, we disconnected. I can see it over my monitor. All right, are we back? Not yet? Give that a second. We'll see if we disconnected or reconnected. I know we lost some frames here. We lost something, I can tell you that. All right, we're back. Yep, everything's back up here. Sorry, you guys. Everything just kind of stopped for a second. All right, let's get back to it, though. From ABC News, Atlanta police officer fired after fatally shooting Rayshard Brooks has been reinstated. From Emily Shapiro and Marlene Lenthang. The Atlanta police officer, who was fired after fatally shooting a black man in a Wendy's parking lot last year, has been reinstated by Atlanta Civil Service Board. Rayshard Brooks, a 27-year-old husband, father, stepfather, was running away. What? I've seen the video. He wasn't running away. When he was shot by Officer Garrett Rolfe on June 12th, Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard said at the time. Rolfe, a 7-year veteran of the police department, was fired and charged with felony murder. Rolfe appealed his firing, and Atlanta Civil Services Board ruled on Wednesday that due to the city's failure to comply with several provisions of the code and the information received during the witness's testimony, Rolfe was not afforded his right to due process. Lance LaRusso, who represented Rolfe in his appeal, told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Rolfe will essentially be on administrative leave pending the outcome of the charges. The board noted that Rolfe did not receive a 10-day notice of his termination, which took effect on June 14th. According to the city's code, an employee against whom an adverse action is to be taken shall be given a written notice of a proposed adverse action, signed by the appointing authority or designee, at least 10 working days prior to the effective date of the proposed adverse action. At least 10 working days prior to the effective date of the proposed adverse action, the Civil Service Board found the city's actions were not compliant with 10 days prior notice period as required by the code, as a notice of proposed adverse action and notice of final adverse action were issued to his union rep on June 13th. LaRusso applauded the ruling. We are very pleased that this action and consider it a first step in the total vindication of Officer Garrett Rolfe, he said in a statement. L. Chris Stewart and Justin Miller, attorneys for the Brooks family, said at a press conference on Wednesday that the family feels disappointment and confusion. Well, first and foremost, he wasn't running away. He had the taser, and he was pointing it back. He was not running away at the time. So, I don't know where you're getting this from, this whole he was running away bullshit. Once again, looking back and hoping that they've fueled enough narrative for this. Now, do I have questions about this? I do still have questions about this. But no, I probably wouldn't put this guy back on the force either, just to be completely honest. Because now he's going back out on the streets with a grudge. So, a lot of stuff going on with this, but it looks like, yes, he will be reinstated at this point. All right. Come on. From the New York Post. Bill Gates took getaways with his ex-girlfriend after marriage to Melinda. From Kate Sheehy. After marrying his wife, Bill Gates would spend a long weekend every year at a cozy beach cottage in North Carolina with his old girlfriend. The billionaire Microsoft founder made sure the bizarre arrangement was part of the deal when he married Melinda French in 1994, he told Time magazine in a 1997 profile. We can play putt-putt while discussing biotech, Gates said of his private getaways, with fellow nerd techie and ex Anne Winblund, who is now happily married to actor Kevin Kline's detective brother Alex Kline, a source told the Post on Tuesday. Gates even sought Winblad's approval before proposing to his wife. When I was off on my own thinking about marrying Melinda, I called Anne and asked for her approval, he said, adding that Winblad gave the other woman the thumbs up. Winblad recalled, I said she'd be a good match for him because she had intellectual stamina. Gates, who announced with Melinda on Twitter on Monday they were divorcing after 27 years, revealed that he and Winblad started taking an annual trip to his ex's Outer Banks home when they began dating in 1984 after meeting at a computer conference. So, there's a lot of stuff. I think for the most part, people are just speculating at this point to try and figure out why this happened after 27 years. Because they're in such high profile, and Gates is the saint of the world because he's getting the vaccine and he's totally not depopulating the world. But, it'll come out when it comes out. I really don't care, but it's big news, so I figured that at least one person in the audience might care. So, all right. Let's keep going here. I thought this was kind of dumb. I got this. I got one more. A couple of really dumb articles to close out. Then we've got a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. All right. From the Blaze, farmer builds 250-foot long wall of poop on property line after dispute with neighbor. From Sarah Taylor. A Michigan farmer reportedly built up a poop wall after a dispute with a neighbor, according to Fox News. Wayne Lambarth said his neighbor, a fellow farmer, erected a 250-foot wall of manure along their respective properties in Lodi Township following a property line dispute that reportedly took place in 2020. Lambarth said the wall isn't just an eyesore, it stinks to high heavens. Normally it's spread it on the field, but they decided to make a fence out of it, Lambarth explained. He added that he has tenants that live in the home on his property, and they've complained about the stench. One of the tenants told WJBK-TV, it's just a shit pile over there. The other tenant added, it's like you can't leave the window open, the whole upstairs will smell like it. The neighbor, who remains unidentified at the time of the reporting, denied that the structure is a poop wall. It's a compost fence, he told the station. I like that. I actually do. WJBK's Charlie Langton and Amber Ainsworth wrote, he was also told that God damn it. Don't put the fucking video in the middle of there. He was also told that his neighbor did not like the poop, to which he responded something inaudible about not liking the price of milk before he got back to work on his farm. The outlet reported that local officials can do nothing about the feces fence because it's on private property. This isn't the first time a person used dung as ammunition on a private fight. In 2019, authorities placed an Oregon man on probation for 3 months after he reportedly used a poop bomb on a friend with whom he had a dispute. Well, there's that. I mean, at least the grass will grow really well over there. And at least it's cow shit. I mean, it's not like he just started saving up all the stuff out of his septic tank and put human crap over there. God, people are petty. All right, and this one here I found entertaining, mostly because of the reaction from Midget B over in the Discord. But it was still entertaining nonetheless. Snout clout. Larger noses equal larger penises. Is it penises or peni? Because I always thought it was peni. According to study from Ben Cost. Perhaps Pinocchio had a secret. In a study that'll no doubt inspire a spike in nose jobs, Japanese researchers discovered that men with large sniffers tend to pack larger peni as well. This study is the first to demonstrate the relationship between stretched penile length and nose size, wrote researchers at the Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine. To determine the connection, scientists examined the bodies of 126 recently deceased middle-aged men, measuring everything from the cadaver's height and weight to the circumference and length of their flaccid members, the Daily Mail reported. For the nosy study, published in Basic and Clinical Andrology, scientists have approximated the measurements of subjects' manhood when erect by laying each stiff down and extending the willy up as high as it would go. They then compared the results to the lengths of the nose. Who is funding this? And why? Do you think somebody in Japan just woke up one day and said, "Oh no, I think people with bigger nose, they have bigger junk"? Like, seriously. They found men with 2.2-inch snouts packed larger penises that clocked in at 5.3 inches long. Meanwhile, corpses with beaks smaller than 1.8 inches packed manhoods measuring up to 4.1 inches long. Yeah. Anyway. Alright. That's going to be it for the news for the day, though. The last thing we're going to do, because it's Thursday, is a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and we'll head on out of here for the day. So, thing that I like number 1 comes to us from SpaceX. First, we'll look at the video, a little bit of the video. It's not huge, but we'll look at a little bit of the video, and then we'll read the article from space.com. Live feed of Starship SN-15 flight test.
3 engines to flip the stage back to vertical and eventually land on a single engine. This flight includes multiple upgrades and improvements to address the findings from the rapid unplanned disassembly we experienced on the last flight. This vehicle also incorporates changes that get us closer to the orbital
configuration. Did they just refer to an explosion as rapid unplanned disassembly?
For the flight of Starship 15, we get a view of the 3 Raptor engines as we're powering our way to 10 kilometers altitude in today's test flight.
Now there they go.
Just past 1 minute into flight, we're through 2 kilometers altitude. All 3 Raptor engines continuing to burn. Next major event, about 1 minute, is we will turn off the first of the 3 Raptor engines. Coming up on 3.5 minutes into flight, we're approaching the 10-kilometer altitude. We'll begin to hover here. We've had engine number 2 shut down on time. We'll now be moving into the hover with 1 engine. And then in a little bit, we will begin the flip over to horizontal position and begin our descent. But hopefully a ground camera will be able to bring us live views of the flight.
All right, so they got to the 10-kilometer. Now they
engine, and then possibly a second one, and land on a single engine in the landing zone. 5 minutes into flight, Raptor continuing to descend.
There it goes.
And we have ignition.
There he goes,
Starship
right there.
Heading back to the landing zone.
There it is. He landed it. Landed it upright. There you go. Huzzahs! All right. So we watched enough of the video there. Let's go see what space.com has to say. As I'll have to reload for a second. From space.com, SpaceX launches Starship SN-15 rocket and sticks the landing in a high-altitude test flight. From Mike Wall, SpaceX's SN-15 stuck the landing. The private spaceflight company's latest Starship prototype aced a high-altitude test flight Monday, checking every box from takeoff to touchdown for the first time. "We are down, the Starship has landed," John Insprucker, SpaceX's principal integration engineer, said during a live commentary. Today's uncrewed test came on the 60th anniversary of the U.S.'s first ever crewed spaceflight. The suborbital jaunt of NASA astronaut Alan Shepard. The historical parallel is coincidental but appropriate. The SN-15 success marks a big step forward in SpaceX's plans to help extend humanity's footprint out into the final frontier. The stainless steel SN-15, serial number 15, lifted off from SpaceX's Starbase test site near the South Texas village of Boca Chica. Today at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time, the vehicle soared about 6.2 miles, 10 kilometers into the sky, performed a number of maneuvers, and came back down for a single safe touchdown at its designated concrete landing pad 6 minutes after takeoff. So, we're getting there, and once again, we're seeing private industry come out and do what the government could not do for 50 years. And I'm excited to see it. And I'm excited for the fact that Elon Musk, a private contractor, not a government official and not the government, is the one doing it. The free market can do better than the government can 10 times out of 10. Always has, always could. And I'm so excited for that. I think that's awesome. I'm not going to lie. I think that's one of the most awesome things there is. So, absolutely congratulations to Elon as well for his successful flight. Now let's do a thing that I hate. All right, from the Post-Millennial. Teens who killed Uber driver get off easy, while teen who was accused of rigging homecoming election to be tried as an adult. A juvenile young woman who was accused of rigging an election for homecoming at her high school in Florida is set to be tried as an adult. 2 juvenile young women who killed an Uber driver in Washington, D.C. were not tried as adults and will not face any jail time. Those 2 girls who carjacked a man, which led directly to his death in the crash, reached a plea deal with prosecutors and will not suffer any jail time. After the 2 carjacked the man, drove off with his car and flipped it over on its side, which killed the man. One of the girls was frantically searching for her cell phone and wanted to go back to the car to get it. In defending the decision to not try the girls in D.C. as adults, acting Washington, D.C. Police Chief Robert Conti III said that the 15-year-old would not be charged as an adult. Obviously this is a tragic case. Charging this person as an adult who's a juvenile does not bring back the lost loved one in this case. Well, I'm got news for you, Robert Conti III. Charging anybody in a murder case doesn't bring back the lost loved one in any case. So if that's going to be your justification for this, then you need to go find a better justification, because that's just a bullshit fucking cop-out. Conti downplayed the crime as well, saying it was merely a symptom of a larger problem. That's one of many, he said. We have one for that particular one of individuals involved, but there are several carjackings that we have had so far this year where we're seeing individuals that are involved in multiple cases. So clearly I think it speaks to us really examining as a community the accountability that's in place. I think it's a larger issue than just this one particular case. The homecoming queen's jurisdiction in Florida is of course a different jurisdiction from that of the young woman in D.C., but the consequences of killing a man seem vastly more lenient than those for voter fraud in an election for homecoming at a high school. Yeah, why was there a criminal charge for this? I don't understand that. Give her detention. I mean, if there was a scholarship at play, I could see, because you're actually directly stealing from somebody at that point. But why is there a criminal charge for stealing a homecoming queen election? Was there a scholarship that was associated to it? Was there actual, probably not hard cash, but some other sort of academic benefit? Then I could see it, but there shouldn't even be a criminal charge for this. This person should be disqualified from ever running for any sort of court again, and possibly given a long detention or something, but not a criminal charge. But furthermore, I want to step back and just touch on what's happening in D.C., because this whole thing in Florida is just straight up horseshit. But going back onto D.C. and the fact that, we're sitting here and the D.C. police are coming out saying that we just have to figure out what the base is, what the basic thing is, why these teenagers are doing this. We need to address that. I mean, it's not about the fact that they killed a man. We have to figure out why they killed a man, and we need to get to the root cause of the problem. Whereas their counterparts in the Capitol Police, Brian Sicknick died a day after the Capitol Selfie Fest. It was murder! It was murder. I'm telling you, it was murder. But the cop that shot Ashley Babbitt was totally justified. So, really, honestly, if you live in D.C. for any reason at this point, I'm so glad Steven got out. But if you live in D.C. for any reason at this point, get the fuck out. Especially if you're melanated the same as I am, because they don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you unless they can find some way to use you to advance their own agenda. Get out of there. It's all politics at this point. It's all trying to come out with a narrative. And it's shit. It's fucking crap. The whole city is a hive of scum and villainy, and they want to give it statehood on top of this. Maybe they should fix their own problems first, or let Maryland come in and fix the fucking problems for them. Which would actually be funny, because first Maryland would have to fix fucking Baltimore. But with that, we're done. It's over. So, let's change up the scene. Let's throw some music on and head on out of here. Alright, so thanks everybody who came and hung out. And if you are just lurking right now, by the way, Random Randy, this is a Spectrum thing. This is not my side, but I do think that it does come in part to the fact that occasionally, because the old girl's old and we're working on building a new one right here, which if you throw me a couple in the Buy Me a Coffee or the PayPal or the Subscribe Star, you can help me get the new one as well. But the processor hits the peak and it takes power away from the router as well. I'm not stealing Wi-Fi, I promise. But yeah, thanks for the concern on that anyway. It is a mix of a couple things, so we're trying to get them, at least one of them addressed. as far as the Spectrum thing, we can't really address that, but we're trying to get at least one addressed. So making sure that we can give you the best program possible. I am in the process of building a new PC because it's time, and we need to have something that'll go. So look forward to that in the near future. Every little bit helps. Buy me a coffee, Subscribestar, PayPal. Thank you guys for that. Otherwise, we will be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary, talking a little bit more. Looks like we're going to be talking about the Arizona election audit again, so we'll talk a bit about that and some other stuff as well. Hope to see you guys there, and I won't be as late tomorrow, I promise, but, well, we'll keep going on our trek to get back to 7 o'clock by the end of May. So thanks for your support. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.